Hello and welcome to the
Solid start, mate.
again.
Off to the races.
I hate you guys.
Love you, Josh.
Hello and welcome to the Unlucky Frog Gaming Podcast. You are joined by your usual hosts here. We've got Ryan.
Hello.
We've got Tom.
Hello.
And we've got myself, Josh. How are we doing, guys? We'll start with Ryan.
Surprisingly,
Tom always gives me a hard time for not directing questions when we have multiple people on. So I'm remembering to do it now. So there.
I'm surprised I'm my usual host, but
I know you've been promoted, apparently.
Awesome.
There
What's
we
it feel
are.
like?
Yeah, it's...
I'm doing good. Running on about 3.5 hours of sleep from a bit of an escapade of missing car keys, potential flights going awry, whole thing. It was a bit of a rude awakening, but I helped some people out, got some spare car keys where they needed to go, and now I'm here recording the podcast. So it's been an eventful morning.
We appreciate you still coming on here.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done it.
Forgive
I'd be in my bed.
Yeah, no. If
you wouldn't have helped, full stop.
That's also true.
Like,
if you would have seen the
thing.
message come up on your phone and go, I'm pretending I didn't see this.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, forgive me if there are any long extended periods of silence. Promise I am not sleeping.
I wouldn't worry. Josh will fill any silences you leave open.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's true. I feel intensely uncomfortable by silence. I have to have music playing in my house like all the time.
To be honest, big same. When I leave the computer to go and do something in the kitchen, headphones go in.
Mm-hmm.
Like you guys have seen me probably like scramble from my phone on the way out of a scene in RPs that we're playing.
Mm-hmm.
I live in a state of perpetual YouTube background. That is like how if I'm not talking to someone, I have YouTube on.
Yeah,
pretty much on constantly.
See, it's either that or actual play podcast for me. Like either a podcast, an audiobook, or YouTube.
That's fair.
I never do audiobooks.
I've been
not cultured enough.
No, I've been really listening to Terry Pratchet, which I've got a deep and profound love for, and I've got a few friends who are getting into the series, so it's just inspired me to get back into it again.
Oh, they're discovering Discworld for the first time. Excellent.
The first book was Mort, which is a pretty good one.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a good one to start off with. And I've picked up Soul Music because I was inspired by just like it's another story about the Reaper, and it's got some really good characters that I like.
Yeah,
it's not as big as any of the main ones where you have the City Guard or anything, but it's one of my favorites.
I was going to say my favourites are the City Guard.
Same.
I love Captain Vimes.
Captain Vimes is a mood. He is certainly an inspiration. Not certain if it's one that you want to live up to, but he's an inspiration.
Yeah, and I quite like Rincewind as well, like the OG.
I prefer Moist as a protagonist, the con artist.
Yeah,
he's always fun.
Mm-hmm. Tom,
I could probably say Death is my overall favorite character.
He's not talking about Terry Pratchett anymore. This is just in life.
The Grim Spectre of Death is my favorite recurring character in existence.
My favorite Discworld book was probably Eric. That was like one of my first ones I read, so it very much kind of resonated with me. I like Rincewind. I tend to like the ones that are like more standalone though. Like I like seeing different aspects of the world. Like the recurring characters are cool, but one of the reasons why I like Death is it tends to reoccur intermittently. You know, he kind of appears in a lot of them.
Yeah, he shows up in most
as
of
cameos.
Them,
but things like Small Gods, just like stories that are unrelated to what's happening in the city.
Yeah.
and just like lend credence to like how the world works.
Yeah, I like seeing the world, and I like seeing how I feel with Discworld, the world is like the main character, right? Like,
yes,
the other characters on it, they make it better, and they have their own contributions. But I always felt like the world was that was Pratchett's kind of main focus. And I like seeing the bits that kind of flesh that out, and obviously the way that they satire various modern elements
and fantasy tropes as well, which is pretty
fantasy tropes. Yeah. So yeah, that's a random take on Discworld.
Yeah, there we go. Everyone loves this. I mean, to me, it always felt like this is the fantasy version of Hitchhikers.
Yeah.
He took. I'm fairly sure he took a lot of cues from Douglas Adams.
I never got into Hitchhikers.
No, really.
Hitchhikers is great.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, to be fair, I watched the series before I read the book, so
I've tried to read the book, tried to watch the series,
Mm-hmm.
not succeeded at either. I watched the film, and that was fine.
So that's curious, though, because I do think I don't know. Ryan, disagree with me if you think I'm wrong, but I think I do feel in tone they are very similar to Discworld.
I think so too. Primarily when you get the feeling that the author is talking directly to you. Pratchett does a lot of really good appendix gags, like mention something throughout the chapter with a little asterisk next to it, bottom of the page. Some meta joke or explanation of an anagram or a phrase, like a common parlance phrase.
He is rather fond of the footnote, to the point where I'm sure he did it deliberately. Occasionally, you'll have a footnote that's longer than the main text in the page.
He would either have a footnote within. I think he did a footnote within a footnote at some point, which was another one.
Yes.
But when I started with Pratchett, I listened to a lot of his audiobooks. So a lot of the time it was like professional voice acting, and then just like as if the guy's taking you to the side to go, by the way, this is what this means. Yeah. which I thought lent a bit of extra charm to it. So I don't know if that's like where I.
And I think with Hitchhikers, with it being rooted in a radio play originally, feels a lot like that as well. Yeah. Even though Adams doesn't do the stuff with footnotes, or not quite to the extent that Pratchett
But a lot
does.
of it is like the explanatory nature of how things work in the universe.
Of the guide, yeah. So there we are. That's my 2 cents on.
Thank you for joining us on the Unlucky Frog Literature Corner.
I know we're damn cultured now.
This is all because Josh doesn't listen to audiobooks. That's where that came from.
I know. It's great.
Given that
how's your week been, Tom?
Well, given that
sorry,
that's fine.
Sorry,
Ryan. I was going to say, given that we're talking about literature for about 10 minutes, maybe we can put ourselves in different categories on Podbean.
There we go. Yes. Yeah, we're now a literature podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about pretty much everything and just cover the full spectrum then. So how have I been? That's a good question. I've been pretty good. I've had a very busy week because I've been doing all the characters for the crossover. So when I've not been running or playing games, every other night has been to some degree doing stuff for the crossover characters. So I've had sessions with everybody. And then I started yesterday actually prepping the session itself. So I've done the first kind of page of work on that. I had a very Ryan knows about this because I spoke to him last night. I had a very, very emotional day yesterday, so I'm still quite tired today because
I'm honestly surprised you're not still like in your blanket.
No, I'm okay. I slept on it, but I watched. I decided to just have a very chill day yesterday. Aside from going out for a walk and making some food and stuff, I watched a lot of TV or a lot of stuff online. So I watched the end of Stranger Things season 4, which is 4 hours of just like high tension, emotional whiplash. And then I finished that off to go into 6 hours of the end of Critical Role's Calamity series, which is a 6-hour emotional roller coaster as well.
Spoiler, but not really spoiler alert. Not a lot of people make it out of that. That is the Rogue One of the Critical Role lore.
So I had 10 hours of sort of very emotional viewing. So by the time it got to the end of my Saturday, I was done. I was ruined.
And then we had to go and play Warhammer.
And then I played Warhammer and played a man whore of a character, so that was fine.
That's a nice palate cleanse.
So I kinda
channel your pain.
Just to mess around. So that was fine. How about you, Josh? How was your week?
It's been grand, yeah.
Cool, moving on.
Wow. Okay.
Harsh.
I mean, to be fair, I don't have much to report. Tom and I are gonna do convert Locag over into 5th edition later on today. We might record that. I think
we will record that, and that will go onto our Patreon. So if you are a Patreon subscriber, you will be able to listen to what I'm sure will be the most gripping of content as I work on a new character. Well, not a new character, a rebuild of a character with Josh. But
peek behind the veil.
If you do want to hear how much shit I give Josh off episode, I'm sure it will be rife with that.
The answer may surprise you.
It won't.
If anything, it's more.
He keeps the limiters on.
Aye. So we've got. I've got my character creation session next Friday for my campaign of D&D that I'm running for the guys. So that's. They all know roughly what they want to be. We've got a dwarf bard, a tiefling rogue, and a half-orc ranger. Susan's character, we're going to do the homebrew rat folk. Yeah, and the only question mark is what class is Ratus going to be. So we'll figure that out. But yeah, so I'll do a little bit of prep for that. I have been reading through the starter set and the essentials kit.
I was going to ask, is that what you sort of settled on for them then?
Yeah. I mean, I'll talk to the players next Friday about it as well to make sure they're happy. I think they're solid campaigns though. Like, it kind of covers the full gamut of this is what D&D's like, all these random monsters that you encounter throughout it.
Yeah,
it gives good opportunity for role playing and investigation as well, which is nice.
I had a read through the copy of the beginner's guide you get with D&D Beyond, and I agree that is they've done a good job of making a smorgasbord of what you'd expect in D&D.
Yeah,
and there's enough in there that you can take things in, put things out, make it however you want.
So, and the great thing with how the Essentials kit is structured is it's very sandboxy. So it's quite easy because you've got this common location of Phandalin. It's quite easy to combine the two because literally the Essentials kit is full of quests that are posted on the job board.
Right. Okay.
So it's quite easy to just tack them on.
Yeah.
The complication is leveling because the essential kit assumes they're doing nothing else. Likewise with the campaign in the start set, the Lost Mines of
Phandelver.
Phandelver is a very linear campaign by comparison. So, but I've kind of figured out in my head, okay, well, I'll make sure that certain elements don't get introduced until they reach level 3. Certain elements don't get introduced until they reach level 5.
Sometimes if you're worried about the players being a little bit tougher, there's nothing wrong about adding a smaller minion character into the boss fight.
And to be honest, I would rather it was that way round rather than them having a crack at something
getting absolutely stomped.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that just from reading it and from advice posted online, there's one of the first quests you can do in the Essentials kit has you face off against a Manticore, which is a bad idea if they're level 1.
Not a great idea if they're level 2.
When they take that quest, you just okay, I'll take your character sheets and explain what happens as we sunset into your new characters. Here's your sheets.
It's interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
So that's an example of one I'm going to hang back on until they reach level 3.
Yeah.
Because I think level 3 they should be fine with the Manticore.
It's interesting.
I think so.
It's fine. One thing with
for the benefit of our listeners, Tom is absolutely raging at the moment.
It's fine. Carry on.
Yeah, on you go, sir.
No.
And now we'll never know.
You've crossed the line.
Yeah. That was the line.
Yep.
That's the line
That's
I've
the line.
crossed.
That's where it
Nothing
is.
else.
That is where
None
it
of
is.
none of.
Nope. That's it. That's where you go. You go too far. You've overstepped. We're done. Goodbye forever.
Right.
Well, thank you for joining us on the last episode of
So what I was
Tom,
going to say,
yes,
if I can remember the point now, the essential guide and the starter guide both feature the same town, right? They're both set in the same town. And I actually found out quite recently this week, I was flicking through a few modules, that town actually appears in another module as well.
Oh.
It appears in the Acquisitions Incorporated guide. There's an adventure in there. And as part of that, they actually go to that town. Because I was literally just flicking through it, and I was like, I know that map. And kind of flicked back to the map, and I was like, oh, they actually go to the town. Because Acquisitions Incorporated is set in the Forgotten Realms as well. So they've obviously tied it in.
And I think one of the characters is like from a town between like Waterdeep and Phandalin. So like it makes sense that they would have stuff in that area.
Yeah. It's really cool.
And the nice thing with doing these two campaigns as well is assuming that they survive to level 6 and they beat the Frost Dragon and they discover the magical forge and they complete all of that stuff. It's really easy to sort of introduce them to different pre-written campaigns as well. I mean, they could have this the job in Barovia posted on the job board there, for example, or because you come across 2 dragons in this, there's the whole Rise of Tiamat campaign as well that it leads on to quite nicely because of you've got like I think they do smatter in a bit of the Cult of the Dragons throughout.
Alternatively, you could like pull a complete 180 and say adventurers wanted for something going on in Chult and throw them into the tomb.
Well, yeah, I mean, in all honesty, that's another thing you can do as well, right? It's just like because the noble that you work for in that is in Waterdeep, so there's nothing stopping you from having that posted on the job board as well.
You could just like ramp up the level scaling of Dragon Heist or Mad Mage and just go into Waterdeep if you want a more urban adventure.
Yeah, well, the Mad Mage starts you at level. It assumes you start at level 5,
and it is a super dungeon, so only if your players like the idea of dungeon crawls.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. I mean, obviously, time will tell. We've only had a few sessions from the Stranger Things starter set. My gut feeling is they really enjoy the role-playing aspect of it. I mean, to the point where I was seriously considering doing Strixhaven for them because that is like mostly role-playing investigation. Yeah,
but there's nothing stopping you having a dungeon crawl and firstly using what opportunities within that dungeon crawl to generate role-playing. Because there'll be, if it's a well-written dungeon, I assume there will be.
Yeah, they'll have a bit of everything.
Yeah, on the first, I've only ran as a GM the first floor, but there are opportunities to socialize with the denizens of the dungeon, and that is there are factions within the dungeon that you will see as reoccurring characters.
And when you presumably go back to the surface at times as well. So that's when you as a GM would use that opportunity to do your role-playing stuff as well. So that's how I do it.
There's also a town in the dungeon. Like, partway down the dungeon, you come across...
Spoilers, Ryan.
Oh, okay. Well, Josh just spoiled the end of the beginner's guide, so I don't think his players are listening to this.
Oh, so we're tit for tat now. We were spoiling shit.
Tom, do you want to spoil how the crossovers are going to go?
No, I'll save that.
That's yet to be written.
Yeah. So is your plan, Josh, and I'm conscious we spent quite a bit of time on this, but I'm curious.
Oh, it's so good.
Are you planning to run both the beginner's guide, the starter set, and the essentials guide?
Yeah.
Do they follow on from each other then?
You can splice them basically.
Right. Okay.
So in terms of it assumes certain events from the starter kit that from the Lost Mines. It assumes some of those events have already happened to a degree, but it doesn't really touch much on what you do in the Lost Mines. So it is entirely possible to. Because the first session of Lost Mines is a scenario involving goblins on the road, and then you level up to level 2 and you get to Phandelver.
Right.
And at that point, when you're in Phandelver, you will have like the sort of trail of breadcrumbs that leads you through the linear adventure of the Lost Mines. But they'll also have the job board where they can go and do the side quests from the Essentials kit if they want to. And by doing those, they'll find out a bit more about Cryovane.
Right. Okay.
And that there's a plot line there that they can follow through on if they want to.
Okay, that's interesting. So, that's quite a good way to do it, I suppose. I'd be interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and I think with them being new players as well, I suspect at some point I'm going to have to, I will say when they're in Phandelver, okay, out of character time now, you've got several routes that you can go down. You can do this, and you can do this. Well, obviously, once they've read the job board and they've talked to the relevant NPCs, etc.
Okay.
And then at that point, I can say, between you decide which one that you want to go for so that I can prep that session and take it from there.
Okay, that's quite interesting.
Yeah. And from the way that these are running, to be honest, this is going to take us a long time to get to that point where they're like level 6.
Yeah.
So this will be plenty of content for them to work through for the time being.
That's good. Should we talk a little bit about some announcements and things for this week? I'm conscious we spent 20 minutes talking about
just
anything but
Terry Pratchett and and D&D. So no, that's cool. Where do we want to start?
We'll start with the paints. First, start with the lighter subject matter, I suppose. Yeah. So basically, this is just a quick one, really. Games Workshop have released an extension and a slight replacement to some of their paint range. So this is the new contrasts and some replacement shades. So contrast paints have been done before. That came out 2 years ago now.
3 years ago. It's
that
2019. Because it was the UK Games Expo that we went to where they launched it.
So it was. So this is they've basically added to that range quite a lot of colours as well. Like it's like an extra 20 or so colours to it. More vibrant range. Obviously, the contrast paints have proved very popular with a lot of people. I don't love them. I don't mind them. They have grown on me since my initial sort of review of them, if you will, my initial thoughts. So I do use them sparingly, but they have added a lot of colours to the range, and they have included some really nice colours, and they've replaced the shade range with the same colours. There's no change in colorations, but they're apparently better. They sort of settle into the recesses better than the original, because sometimes you get that kind of pooling effect when you put a shade on, and I think they've tried to kind of minimize that, and I don't think you'll ever fully minimize it, but they've made it better. Now I've not tried either of them yet. They've literally only went up for pre-order yesterday, so we're purely going on Games Workshop's PR for these, but they seem to be very positive, unsurprisingly, about their own product.
Yes.
It's not like they're going to go out and say, this might work, possibly, who knows?
I don't know. That's how I feel we did when bloody Finecast released. Like, you know, you could only be so positive about that. You know, you kind of hit a diminishing returns on it after a while.
I kind of suspect the thing with Finecast is they never invested too heavily into it, because I think at that point they knew that they were going to transition to having almost everything in plastic anyway.
No, I disagree. Like, I think because they had to get machines specifically for it. Like, it was an investment. Wow. It wasn't a simple, like, this is just something to tide us over. It just went real wrong. But I suspect they probably went in, right, and they were like, this is going to be the next big thing. This is going to replace metal for us, allow us to do a lot more with the range than they could even do with plastics. They've gone in, they've put the machines in, they've started the process, and they must have got somewhere down that process and started to realize this isn't going to be as good as we think it's going to be.
Is this the set that I think Will was talking about, where he had to help somebody get a complete set of the Fellowship because parts were just warped?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah,
right. Okay.
Basically, you would have models where they were miscast. There were like huge bubbles in them that had taken out like faces and things. They were just bent beyond kind of all recognition, and you can. With Finecast, you can reposition it and rebend it, but there's like a point of no return with that, where you just can't save it. So Finecast kind of came out, all these models came out, they re-released a lot of models for it, and they really tried to push it as like the next big thing, but they didn't really follow up on that. It was kind of like, here's a lot of Finecast, it's going to be awesome, and then quite quickly Finecast sort of disappeared, and went
like
to
maybe
sort of
one or two runs of stuff, and then yeah.
Well, you can still buy, like, they don't brand it as Finecast. They're just resin models on but they're not available in any of the bricks and mortar stores. It's always
Finecast
on the website.
Is a misnomer of epic proportions.
Mediocre cast.
Yeah, at best. Generous to call. I'm sorry, it sucks. It just sucks, right? It really sucks. And I've slagged it multiple times, and when you had to try and sell that stuff positively, it was rough.
I can imagine that would be a nightmare. It's like, hey, look, it has more detail. Don't mind the fact that Frodo's face isn't there.
It's a huge hole. The void of a face. So anyway, that was Citadel's paint range announcement. One thing I do really like about it, I will sort of end on a positive about this. Okay. They've released 2 bundles. You can get the contrast bundle, you can get the shade bundle. They're quite expensive. They're about 120 quid and 90 quid respectively. But if you get those bundles, you get cups. And I love a cup anyway. But one of them is a black cup, and it says not paint water. The other one is a red cup that says paint water.
Love
that. So you don't accidentally drink your paint water.
That's pretty good.
I thought it was good.
See, for a second there, I thought when you said like I love a good cup, my mind for some reason flashed back to the days where you could get like the Nutella jars that had like the Simpsons and Flintstones characters on them, and you could just like winch them out and just use them as tumblers.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's like they come with cups. It's like the paints come in a giant glass. What?
Excellent.
We do have something a bit more serious to talk about as well.
Yes.
Do you want to introduce this, Josh, or do you want me to?
Well, I'll briefly provide the context for all of this, and then if you could dive into basically how it pertains to our hobby. So I'm sure that people who have been keeping up with current affairs over in the United States will be aware of a big ruling from the Supreme Court. Basically, the Supreme Court justices have overturned a case called Roe versus Wade, which I don't know the full details around it, but the sort of the long and the short of it is that a woman's right to have access to abortion services in the United States is no longer effectively a constitutional right. So that's been overturned, and subsequently from that point, a bunch of states, Republican states basically, of the more conservative parts of America, have banned abortions basically. So this is the context of what we're about to talk about, because this story pertains to one of the biggest companies in our hobby, Wizards of the Coast, who are of course based in the United States.
Yeah, so I want to just clarify one thing before we go into this. Although this does refer to Wizards of the Coast, it is specifically Hasbro, who are their parent company.
The owners,
What has happened is the Wizards of the Coast employees, so they fall under Hasbro's umbrella, as we mentioned, have staged a walkout over Hasbro's response to the ruling that Josh just discussed. essentially referring to it as tone deaf. They have put up a post on a Twitter that they've made called Wizards for Justice, where they've basically called out Hasbro for a lackluster response to the Supreme Court's ruling. And then they've hashtagged it with Wizards of the Coast staff as well. There is a lengthy letter that I'm not going to read out that they've posted up just because there's a lot of content, and I don't feel me reading out would do it justice. But if you do want to read it, you can find it on the Wizards for Justice Twitter. And I would, if it's something you're interested in, or you obviously want to put an eye to, I'd go and have a look at it. It has accumulated a lot of retweets, over 1,000. It's been quoted multiple times, shared something like 40,000 times as well. And I think it's really disappointing that Hasbro, who are a big company, and they're a big company that kind of represent what I would consider a fairly open-minded community, or at least a progressively open-minded community. It's got its problems, but it's getting better. They've stated that additionally, we recommend that Hasbro acknowledge the disproportionate impact this ruling has had on marginalized people, fully disclose details on additional healthcare travel benefits, as many other companies have already done. This includes Wizards' representation in future conversations about healthcare benefits as a whole. So it's not just about Roe versus Wade. There's obviously also healthcare benefits as part of this discussion as well.
It's in regards to just like reproductive rights as a whole, not just the whole abortion debate. But it's not a great look for Wizards, and with the company that, again, from the spaces that we come from, the groups that they try to encourage to play the game, this is absolutely not the right approach to take with any of this.
No, and I suspect there's probably a lot more at play here than just Hasbro being quieter than they should be. You know, this is people with a lot of money dealing with other people with a lot of money, and we know that this tends to be a bit of a quid pro quo, and you back me and we'll back this. And once you start to get up to the higher levels of leadership in these larger companies, which Hasbro is, it's a massive company. They are very reluctant to take strong stands on these kinds of things, lest they offend investors.
I think that's the thing. I do understand the desire for a company to not upset anyone, but there comes a point whereby not taking a certain stance is just going to piss everyone off. Right. So you're probably as well like picking a side.
The thing is as well, though, as they say in the live letter, a lot of companies have taken a stand, or at least gone as far as to clarify things and say, well, this is what our kind of this is what we'll provide. This is our stance on this. This is how we will act in X, Y, or Z situation.
There are points to that. For example, they are if they were working, if this company is based in a state that banned abortion, but they could travel to a state that could, or even Canada, which has opened its borders to people who are looking for that under the free healthcare.
Right.
Like Hasbro's message didn't address any of that, their consideration for their own staff under these provisions, in an attempt to not rock the boat, which is cowardly. And again, I agree with you, Tom. It's like they should decide one way or the other, and have it, either be hated by a group and venerated by the other, but just do something.
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, I would rather that decision was the right one as opposed to the alternative.
I absolutely agree.
I don't think any of us would feel otherwise. But I really agree with the Wizards of the Coast staff. Like it's horrible to be put in a position where you're trying to form this inclusive, welcoming community, and then your parent company takes this very lackluster, almost insulting.
Undermines all your work.
Yeah, exactly.
Really.
Yeah. And here to confirm exactly what we said is our parent company, Hasbro. Crickets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it just kind of shows, it's very much a telling position on where your priorities lie. They don't, and I know, like, any big company, ultimately money is the bottom line and things like that, but you would like to think, Hasbro, they're ultimately, amongst other things, they're a toy provider. They sell things for like kids and younger people. You would think they would want to be in touch with society's progressiveness, not the alternative. Which is just not the case, unfortunately. So not the most positive of things to discuss, but it is something that needs to be addressed. And
absolutely,
for what it's worth, I do very much agree with the stance that the Wizards of the Coast staff have taken. And I hope something comes off the back of it, and healthcare benefits as well, like that. I just thinking, in this, I'm not pro privatized healthcare. I detest it principally. And the fact that that's not a discussion that's happening as well is equally concerning.
Yeah, the States are a crazy place to live.
Yeah.
I'm very, very grateful for the benefits that we do have in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, there are. In order to have those discussions, a lot of things would have to topple over. Like, they'd have to start pulling the Jenga tower from the bottom. In order to make things better.
It's interesting. When I worked for a brief while in travel insurance, and one of the things that I saw that I just could not, it just blew my mind, was how much medical bills are in the States. Like, we see it, if you ever watch things like Scrubs or ER and things like that, you see references to, obviously how much people have to pay. But when you actually see the numbers, like just for like an ambulance, or for someone to be prescribed like basic over-the-counter painkillers, like, you're talking hundreds, creeping up to sometimes thousands of dollars for what we would consider mundane, things to have.
One of my friends who works in insurance in America described it to me as this: the number that the patient and the insurance company see is an opening barter, basically saying, we know this is a ridiculous number, and you're going to fight with us to get this down to a reasonable thing to bring it within the client's insurance. But if your client doesn't have insurance, that ridiculous number is all they see. They don't have anybody to fight for them. They don't have anybody to say, this is ridiculous. Here's a less ridiculous figure, but it still could break the backs of a lot of people's budget.
And I think that's even more ridiculous, right? Because
do you want that appendix out? You're not paying rent this month.
Yeah, they don't even have like a standardized rate. That's just mental, to not even have like a guideline to be like, an ambulance call out should be, $50, $100, whatever it might be, and an X-ray should be X amount of dollars, because you should be able to go
like uptime maintenance.
We pay this, like with any service in the civilized world, we pay this amount for maintenance, we pay this amount for owning the machine, we pay this amount for the staff, we pay this amount to cover, our own insurance and things like that. We need to charge X amount, but just going, let's charge this amount and use it as a bargaining chip when people's health is on the line is disgusting. Like, it's how do you sleep at night? That's just
on a pile of money.
Yeah. And you hear these horror stories, not to get too off track and political, but
of course,
you hear these horror stories about people, they won't even let people call an ambulance for them because they can't afford to pay to go to a hospital. That's terrifying. Like, say what you will about the NHS, and, there are plenty of things about that we know could be better that aren't necessarily even the NHS's fault. But, I'm at least comfortable that if I need to phone an ambulance, I don't need to worry about eating for the next 6 months.
It reconstitutes a lot of those get me to the hospital scenes you see in American media.
Yeah.
Where they're not getting an ambulance, they're grabbing somebody's car.
Yeah. Yep. So, that's not a great note to end off on, but...
I was just going to say, we've gone from Terry Pratchet to healthcare.
Well, we'd like to take you through the full gamut.
Do we want to...
Quite the adventure.
Do we want to talk about Tabletop Scotland and try and leave it on a slightly more positive note?
Yes, go on, then. Let's, because that is time is marching on. Tabletop Scotland is now 8 weeks.
It's a march to tabletop.
Yes. So we're obviously we're all getting prepared for. It was remiss of us to not mention last time, although we mentioned it in the recording that got lost.
The lost archives.
Yes.
Some digital archaeologist is going to find that at some point.
Yes. Ryan's coming
Hello.
with us. We should have said that. Yeah.
Looking forward to being there.
That is why Ryan has been on recently, but it doesn't make a lot of sense if we don't explain it.
Yeah,
I'm also here. No, I'm looking forward to joining you guys, and like, I was with you at Tabletop 19, with yourself doing the GM.
You did the seminar with me.
Yeah. And that was a great time. Like, I'm honestly looking forward to going back and seeing what's on offer this year.
It's great. Yeah, no, a great convention that we're all looking forward to.
Yeah.
Just in terms of things that they are looking for some feedback on, Dave has posted on the Facebook page a little poll about the food that's on offer. So the Dewars Centre have the cafeteria and pub, and they're kind of wanting to get some feedback on what people are looking for, dietary requirements or just tastes in general. So we'll pop a little link to that poll for you guys to take part in. So if there's a really specific dish. I know Tom's looking forward to having some Lobster Thermador. The Dewars Centre. No, it's not on there. You can, I believe, you can add answers to this poll though. So Tom, by all means,
lobster tails for the table.
Well, when they did the first poll, so we did a poll for drinks first, a week or so ago. I think the winning thing was cherry Pepsi. Like, so specific. Wow. And I voted for it, so I can't really.
Like if lime Diet Coke was an option, that would be my vote.
Yeah.
So who knows what we'll get? Lobster Thermador could well be on. I mean, we could start a campaign right now to get Lobster Thermador onto the.
Surely it'd be Frog's Legs if it's the Unlucky Frog Gaming podcast.
We'll probably get some angry messages from Dave if we start a campaign for Lobster Thermador.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Yeah, let's not say we did. Well, what a brilliant time that was. What a great prank we pulled.
On the note of Lobster Thermador and Frog's Legs, let's draw this week's episode to a close. So, as always, thank you very much for listening, and until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.